everyone, welcome to Botany Insider, and in this lecture we would be understanding about the next plant hormone, and that is ethylene. So let us have the introduction of the hormone first. So the first important point is that the general formula for ethylene is C2H4. The next point is that it is the simplest olefinic acid. Make sure you remember this word. Then the next point is that it is flammable, that is it can catch fire when exposed to the hot temperature. Next, it is highly volatile, and because it is highly volatile, that means it is gaseous in nature. So the next point or the next important highlighted point is that it is the only plant hormone that is gaseous in nature. So the only hormone that is gas at normal temperature and pressure is the ethylene. It can be absorbed by KMNO4. It is a colorless gas, and also it have a sweet and musky smell in its nature. Let's move forward and understand about the other points. Next, that it can be detected by the gas chromatographic techniques, flame ionization detector, and laser driven photoacoustic detector. Make sure you remember these points because one question have been asked in the form of statement type from this area. The next point is that it forms through the breakdown of the methionine that is present in all the cells. So ethylene is actually formed by the breakdown of the methionine. It is produced by almost all the organs, and it is maximum in the ripe fruits. Means that ethylene is produced almost in all the organs of the plants, and especially it is produced in the maximum concentration in the case of ripened fruits. Next, the effectiveness, that is the amount or the way in which this particular hormone would impact the plant development, is dependent upon the rate of production versus the rate of escape in the atmosphere. In simple term, it means that consider this is a plant. So the rate at which the ethylene is getting produced in this plant is compared to the amount, or is compared to the rate by which it gets escaped in the atmosphere. In this comparison between the two rates of production and the rate of escape in the atmosphere actually determines the effectiveness of this plant hormone. The next important point is that it largely, or it at maximum point, leads to growth inhibition of the plant. Ethylene helps in both promotion and the inhibition, but majorly it leads to the growth inhibition in the plants. It stimulates transverse or isodiametric growth in the plant. What is isodiametric? And in the plant there is occurring width increase, or when there is occurring increase in the width of the plant, that is known as isodiametric growth, and this isodiametric growth is actually stimulated by the ethylene plant hormones. And because it stimulates the isodiametric, it retards the longitudinal growth of the plant. It leads to the epinestic bending of the leaf. Make sure you remember that ethylene is the hormone that leads to the epinestic bending of the leaves. How you can remember is E stands for ethylene, and epinestic starts with E. So it is easy to remember that ethylene leads to epinestic bending of the leaves. Next important point is that it is used in the triple response. We will understand about this in detail in the next slide. It inhibits the leaf expansion in the early growth or the germination phase, which means that consider this is a leaf. So in the early growth phase or in the early germination phase, this plant hormone would not allow this leaf to expand its area. The last point is that it affects the stem diameter and height both. Why? Because we have just studied that it stimulates the transverse and isodiametric, and it retards the longitudinal growth. Hence, it affects the stem diameter and its height. So this is what the fruit ripening actually looks like. So we have banana initially green in color, but as the ethylene content increases, it leads to the change in color and with subsequent stages of color changes, it finally ripens into the final stage of the fruit. One more important point to remember is that ethylene is the only plant hormone that keeps on releasing or that keeps on producing even after getting plucked off from the plant. Why? Because as you can see that these bananas, even when kept in the refrigerator for a long time, leads to the change in the color. So this proves that ethylene is actually getting produced even after the fruit is detached from the plant. And same is the case, you can see in the other example, we can see tomato changing its color from green to bright red. This is also the case of ethylene functioning in the fruit. Let's understand about the ethylene getting converted into ethylene oxide. So we have C2H4, which is the general formula of ethylene, in the presence of water gets converted into CH3, CH2OH. So here we have the ethylene and this is ethylene oxide, and this ethylene can be easily absorbed by the KMNO4 as we have already studied in the previous slide, and this KMNO4, that is potassium permanganate, is actually used to remove the ethylene from the storage chamber. And why it is done so? In order to shorten or in order to have a longer life of the unripe fruit, and also so that the fruits can be stored for a longer time in that storage chamber and hence increase the shelf life of those fruits. So this is the commercial application of KMNO4 in case of the C2H4, that is the ethylene getting released from the plant. So make sure you remember this. So let's understand about the biosynthesis pathway of the ethylene in detail. We have main 3 steps for the production of ethylene. The precursor molecule for the biosynthesis is known as the methionine, and this methionine in the first step gets converted into S-adenosyl methionine or SAM, which is also given the name S-adomat, and this S-adomat gets converted into 1-amino-cyclopropane 1-carboxylic acid, that is ACC, in the presence of the enzyme ACS, that is ACC synthase. We'll understand about this in a bit. And the last step is that AC gets converted into ethylene by the help of the enzyme, that is ACO, that is ACC oxidase. In the initial step, we have 1 ATP used, and also the enzyme that is used is adomat synthase, and this adomat synthase helps in the conversion of methionine into S-adomat. This S-adomat gets converted into ACC by the help of enzyme ACS, and this ACC gets converted into ethylene by the help of the enzyme ACC oxidase. Important points to remember is, first, that at the third step we have oxygen getting converted into CO2 and HCN. The next point to remember is that the last step of ACC getting converted into ethylene is inhibited by cobalt. Make sure you remember this inhibitor. And the last point is that when the SAM or S-adomat gets reversed back into the methionine, this cycle is given the name of Yang cycle. Make sure you remember this. This could be a potential statement for a 4-marker part C question. So I hope the biosynthesis pathway is clear to you. So let's discuss about the functions of the ethylene plant hormone. The first important function is that it helps in the senescence. And why it is helping in senescence? Why? Because ethylene is actually leading to the ripening of the fruit, and ripening is the last or the final stage of a fruit. Hence, it is leading to the aging of the plant, or in simple words, it is leading to the aging of the fruit that is present on the plant. The next point is that it leads to ripening. It is also given the general name of ripening hormone. Next point, that it leads to the stimulation of transverse or the horizontal growth, and thus leads to swelling or increase in the thickness of the stem. We have already discussed about this. It leads to flowering or it initiates flowering. It leads to the growth of the seedling. it helps in the sex expression, it helps in apogeotropism, and the last point is that it promotes apical dominance. That means it is working in accordance or in favor of auxin. And what is auxin? We have already discussed about this in detail in the previous videos, so make sure you have watched them. And because it promotes apical dominance, it is working antagonistically to the cytokinin plant hormone, about which also we have already discussed in the previous videos. The next very important topic of ethylene plant hormone is that ethylene leads to the triple response. And what do we mean by triple response? In simple word, it means that it shows 3 responses in plants. So any seed which grows in the dark, because of the ethylene present in the plant, it leads to, or it shows 3 very crucial or 3 very prominent features. And those features are, the first one is short or reduced hypocotyle. The second one is increase in the width or the thickness of the stem, that is, it leads to the swelling of the hypocotyle. And the third one is that it leads to the curling of the apical hook. Let us understand about each one of them in detail. So this is the complete way in which a plant looks like when it is grown in the dark. In the initial case, we have the normal plant getting produced. So now this plant is exposed to dark condition. So this dark condition leads to ethylene showing 3 important responses. The first one is that it leads to the shortening of the hypocotyle. Before understanding that what is the shortening of hypocotyle, let us understand about that what is hypocotyle. So consider we have this seed. So when this seed germinates, we have 2 main parts. In the downward side, we have the roots, then we have one elongated portion, then we have some leaf-like structure, and above that, and we have more of the leaf structures present in this seedling getting germinated. This downward hairy-like structure, which in general word we call it hairs, is actually known as the radicle. So above the radicle and below these 2 leafy structure, we have a portion which is actually known as the hypocotyle. And these 2 leafy structure, which are not leaves, are known as the cotyledons. And beyond the cotyledons, we have this elongated structure known as epicotyle. And above all, we have the leaves. So remember that when a seed germinates, there are 3 important portions. First, the seed which gets germinated splits into 2. They are known as cotyledon. Depending upon the seed, whether it is monocot or a dicot, it would split into 1 or 2 cotyledons. Below the cotyledons, we have hypocotyle, and above the cotyledons, we have epicotyle. So these are the 3 important structures. So when the plant grows in the dark condition, it shows 3 responses because of the ethylene present, and these 3 responses are, the first one is the short or the reduced hypocotyle. So now we know that what is hypocotyle. So because of growing in dark, this hypocotyle region get shortened. This hypocotyle region is short in length. The next point is that it leads to the swelling of the hypocotyle. That is, this hypocotyle swells, means that there is increase in the thickness of this hypocotyle. And the last response is that it leads to the tightening of the apical hook, or we can say that it leads to the curling of the apical hook. So these are the 3 important responses shown when a seed is grown in the dark. So I hope these 3 responses are clear to you. Make sure you remember all the 3 responses in detail. The first one was short or reduced hypocotyle. The next one is increase in the width or the thickness of the stem. And the third one is the curling of the apical hook. So let's move forward and understand about few more important things. Few more important information. The first one is that the mutation in the genes that are involved in the triple response leads to the normal growth of the seedlings. That is, if the genes that are involved in the triple response that we have just studied, it leads to the normal growth of the seedling. The next important point is that we have some ethylene insensitive mutants and some of them as constitutive mutants. In the case of ethylene insensitive mutants, so these are the mutants that fail to respond to the exogenous ethylene. In simple word, it means that those genes or those mutants that fail to respond whether we apply ethylene from the outside or it is produced from inside, we have no response shown. And the most important ethylene insensitive mutants are, we have ETR1, EIN2 and the last one is EIN3. Then we have constitutive mutants. So these are the mutants that display the response even in the absence of ethylene. That is, these mutants are the one that even ethylene is present or absent, these mutants would show the response of the ethylene plant hormone. And the important example are CTR1, ETO1 and the last one is ETO2. CTR1 stands for constitutive triple response 1. ETO1 stands for ethylene overproduction protein 1 and ETO2 stands for ethylene overproduction protein 2. So let's now discuss the last and a very important segment of this topic, that is the complete signaling pathway. So in the signaling pathway, we have some important components. The first important component is the signaling molecule or the ligand, which is the ethylene. Then we have the receptor, which is known as the ETR1, which is known as ethylene response 1. And this ETR1 receptor is copper based, which means that it requires copper for the proper working or the proper functioning. The next important point is that we have some of the transporters of copper ions. So the important transporter that we need to keep in mind is RAN1, which helps in the transport of the copper from the cytosol into the area where the complete signaling pathway is actually about to happen. And the last point is that the location of the receptor is the ER, that is the endoplasmic reticulum, where the receptor or where the complete reaction would initiate. So we have the location of the receptor at the ER, that is the endoplasmic reticulum. We need to understand one more important point, that there are some regulators of this complete pathway, and we have mainly 5 important regulators, and these 5 important regulators are ETR1, ERF1, then we have CTR1, EIN2 and the last one is EIN3. So these are the important regulators of the signaling pathway. The next important point is that the receptor which is present on the ER membrane is actually the negative regulator. Why? Because the binding of the ethylene inactivates the receptor. And what it means, we will understand this by the help of the complete pathway. The next important point to remember is that there are more than one receptor present for the functioning. That is, we have in total, or we have till now 5 receptors discovered, and those receptors are ETR1, ETR2, EIN4, ERS1 and ERS2. All of these receptors have been discovered in the Arabidopsis. Make sure you remember, even if you do not remember the names of these receptors, remember that there are more than one receptors present, because 3 to 4 times questions have been framed about the number of the receptors present for the ethylene signaling. So make sure you remember that there are more than one receptors, and total 5 receptors have been discovered so far. The next important point is that we have already discussed in the previous videos that it follows two component signaling pathway, and the other receptors that we have just discussed are that there are 5 important receptors which are discovered in the Arabidopsis, and we have discussed the names as the following. So let's discuss about the signaling pathway of ethylene in complete detail. We have two cases of the signaling. In the first case we have no ethylene present, and in the second case we would discuss about that when the ethylene is present, what would be the scenario. So in the first case we have no ethylene present. We have in the cytosol copper present, and this copper, because we have understood the receptor works more effectively in the presence of the copper, so this copper gets transported from the cytosol into the endoplasmic reticulum by the help of a transporter which is known as RAN1. And now because the ethylene is not present, this is how the complete functioning would occur. So this copper would come and bind to the receptor, and there occurs a dimer formation. And now because of the dimer formation, there occurs phosphorylation of this dimer, and because it follows two component histidine pathway, so we have the relay race, or we have the relay transfer of the phosphate from one component to the next component. So in the same way this phosphate would get transported, and now because of the activation of this receptor, the CTR1, which is known as the constitutive triple response 1, it gets activated. It is a type of gene, and because of its activation there occurs the phosphorylation of EIN2, and this phosphorylation occurs at the C end, that is the carboxyl end of the EIN2, and this EIN2 is present at the ER membrane itself. I have drawn 2 times ER membrane, so do not get confused that there are 2 ER present. I have just drawn it at this point. Why? In order to have a clear picture of how this complete functioning is happening. So now after the phosphorylation of the C end, that is the carboxyl end of the EIN2, the ETP gets activated, and now as the ETP gets activated and also there is the phosphorylation of the EIN2, this EIN2 cannot get the entry into the nucleus, and because EIN2 cannot get the entry, there occurs the degradation of EIN3 which is present in the nucleus. EIN3 is actually dependent upon the functioning of EIN2, and because there is phosphorylation and no entry in the nucleus, there is EIN3 getting degraded, and because it gets degraded, there is no transcription of ERG, that is, there is no transcription of the most important gene that was supposed to happen, and because there is no activation, there is no transcription, and finally the ethylene do not function. The next point to remember is that this degradation of EIN3 and both EIN2 occurs by the help of the ubiquitin ligase pathway, which is the proteasomal machinery for the degradation of the genes. So now let's understand about the second case in which the ethylene is present. So similar to the last case, we have the copper which is helping in the proper functioning of the receptor. So this copper gets transported from the cytosol into the ER membrane by the help of this transporter, that is RAN1, and now because ethylene is present, this copper comes and binds, forms a dimer, and this ethylene also gets attached to this dimer. And now because the ethylene is binded, there is no phosphorylation of the dimer present, and hence because of no phosphorylation, there is no CTR1 activation. Because CTR1 is not activated, there is no phosphorylation of the EIN2 at the C' end, and because there is no phosphorylation, this EIN2 which is present on the ER gets the entry into the nucleus, and this EIN2 activates EIN3, which in turn activates the ERF1, and finally the ERG, that is the ethylene growth genes, gets activated and gets transcripted, and finally all the functions that we have discussed about the ethylene plant hormone gets functioned properly or gets worked out properly. So this is the complete functioning and the complete signaling pathway of the ethylene plant hormone. The last point to keep in mind is that when there is no ethylene present, there is activation or there is phosphorylation of the CTR1, and when ethylene is present, there is no activation. So presence of the hormone leading to the inactivation of the CTR1, and because of the inactivation the functions are seen of the plant hormone. So this is an unusual phenomena and a different phenomena to be kept in mind in case of ethylene plant hormone. So with this we are done with the complete functioning of the plant hormone and also its signaling and the other important topics. So if you like this video, please do like, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to my channel. And so thank you so much for watching.